Namaste, everyone. This is Shreejan Sita with Sitta Wellness coming to you with our monthly introduction to Ayurveda. This is a time when you're going to be presented with the structure and the purpose of the science of life and have an opportunity to discuss how to adapt it to your daily life in many ways. So Ayurveda means the science of life. These are basic 5 points that we're going to cover and what I need you to understand about Ayurveda. And we'll get into this a little bit deeper, each of the areas. It is the oldest healing science on the planet. We have many indigenous healing traditions from the Aboriginals. Aztecs have their way. The Native Americans have their way. What we have in common is all of us use the same medicine wheel, which we'll take a look at in a minute. Indigenous healing practices, Ayurveda included, is based in the 5 elements and the 3 energies that exist on the earth. There's nothing outside of that, and so we stay inside that medicine wheel to address all consciousness and wellness. The third one is that now that we know about the 5 elements and the 3 energies, our ego has to allow us to accept the fact that we are each of us made of 5 elements and 3 energies as well, and that they behave in the same way as those energies and elements that we observe outside of the body. Once we know that, then we can apply it in prevention stages 0 to 3 as a way of preventing an imbalance. Or if we do find that there is imbalance or disease, in stages 4 and 5, it can be used by expert physicians as a cure as well. And finally, it is also complementary to modern medicine. In many ways, it's compatible with, and then there's only a few contraindications in the case of chemotherapy where it can't be used. Very good. So let's move into the introduction. So you know who's doing the teaching here, and I know that when it comes to modern medicine, you know, you should always find out who your physician is and what they've done in the past and who they've helped and how they help, and make sure that everything's kosher there before you put the trust of your life or your family's life in their hands. I'm a yoga therapist since 1986, and I'll explain to you how I got there. And then in 2013, while in India, I started practicing as an Ayurveda practitioner and opened Sri Devi Wellness Center on the campus of the ashram where I was living to serve the local villagers. Before leaving for India, I published a wellness book with Thompson Learning, now known as Sungage Learning, which is the largest publisher on the planet, and dealt specifically with healers such as the one that I am now. I just found that I was tired of being under the pen all the time, and I kind of wanted to be in the healing room. So I jumped the fence and did that. I also started Rajasthan Hatha Yoga Institute to bring the wisdom of Ayurveda and yoga therapy to more practitioners around the world. And eventually, after staying at the ashram 7 years, co-authored a book, Yoga Ecology, Spirit in the Soil, with the spiritual leader of the ashram. I came home after 7 years to take care of my father, who needed open heart surgery, and opened Sitta Wellness in Southwest Michigan, where we now take clients. So we also take clients and students to the ashram in India, to the wellness center if they need a full cleaning, all the plumbing cleaned out, or if they just want rest and relaxation and some yoga lifestyle for the public training or some travel. So we do take folks there. And on the campus of the wellness center, we bring our physicians in for a full intake program to develop a protocol that will have you completely detoxed and cleansed at a cellular level, and then you can leave with a diet and herbal and movement and meditation suggestions to take home. So while living there, what I realized was that yoga was not a studio or a class, and Ayurveda was not something that was being encountered in the physician's office. Ayurveda is the fabric of their wellness culture. It's in every meal, it's in every interaction, it's in the way they raise their children, the way they interact with strangers, the way they travel, educate. Everything is sort of the result of this fabric of the Indian medical sciences, which predate India itself, was codified about 5,000 years ago, and by then it had been in use for another 5,000 years. Yoga therapy happens to be one branch of Ayurveda. And yoga in India, in my lineage, was given to the people by Gorakhnath and his guru, teacher, Machendranath, and his teacher, Shiva. And Gorakhnath basically explains that the further away from nature that you move, the further from your own nature you become, man-made versus nature-made. And he spent his entire very young youth traveling and explaining this after meditating for 14 years in caves to come out and tell people that the secret of life was actually to stop moving away from nature so quickly. So a lot of people ask me about the name of Siddha Wellness, and I always forget to tell people where this name came from. Actually, my daughter, when she was 9, she's 34, but when she was 9 years old, she named me Sita without actually understanding that Sita is the name of Brahmi's wife, Brahmi being the word in the Vedas for God. So in the Hindu tradition, in the Indian tradition, the world and everything is created by a combination of male and female energy. So if Brahmi, being God, and his wife Sita made the world, one of the daughters was Bhumi, was nature. And so my daughter didn't realize she was naming me the wife of God, but eventually it stuck. And that was a long time ago. And when I opened the clinic, I realized that what I was trying to do was, like Sita, when she started the whole world, was to organize the body in a way that would restore balance. When things are out of order in your home, it causes you some imbalance. When things are put back in order, it it brings you calmness. So one of her chores was to organize all the stars of the sky into constellations that could be recognized and used as a guide for humanity. So she was the great organizer of the stars. So like the stars, the body has organs, and when they're in the right order, in the proper distance from each other, they work very well. But when your posture changes, or there's trauma from an accident, or obesity changes the balance or the attitude of organs, they don't work together like a constellation anymore, and they fall out. And so Sita's job was to reorganize the stars, as mine is to help people reorganize their organs and regions of their body. So that's where the name came from. So let's talk definitions. Ayurveda, Ayu is the base word, and that means science or knowledge, and Veda means life. So it means literally the science of life, and we'll talk about the different branches in a moment. Ayurveda defines health as this: one is in perfect health when the 3 constitutions, or the 3 energies, digestive, fire, and the tissues, and all the excretory functions are in perfect order, with a pleasantly disposed and contented mind, senses, 5 senses, and spirit. So this was in the very beginning, the definition of health. And just within the last 10 years, the CDC has also reorganized its own definition of health to include a pleasant mind, normal functioning of bodily functions, and not just the absence of disease. So this was a very wise move for them, and it actually now includes all the indigenous healing on the planet. The way it works is that Ayurveda assesses the conditions of the body, meaning the order or organization of the energies and the elements, to see if they're in order. And it treats them using an internal purification process, meaning emptying out all of the channels and the organs so that it can no longer hold toxins. After this, a special diet, an herbal remedy, body massage work or other body work, some yoga, some meditation. It's comprehensive. So this is an image that I like to show people, because some of the services that we do in the Wellness Center here and in India don't look like anything that would happen in a modern medicine facility. A lot of people confuse Ayurveda with spa work because it does look like it feels good and you're kind of a little bit naked, not completely all the time. And there is a massage table, so they confuse it also with massage. But a lot of the body work or mind work or diet work that we do is not always pleasant, as some of my clients and team on the call can tell you. Though it addresses the core issue behind the problem, it doesn't always feel like you're going to the spa because you have to let go of a lot of stuff that you're emptying out from inside the body and inside the mind. So at Siddha Wellness and the ashram, we've tried to provide followers and students and clients with what the Vedas instructed us to, which is to say that physicians and practitioners are educators first. And this is a major difference between Ayurveda and Western sciences. Ayurveda says that if you are not also educating the patient, then you are not healing them because they have to go home and do these things for themselves. So they are absolutely complicit in the outcome of their treatment. And that sometimes falls on deaf ears with some people who don't want to be responsible. But for those of us who do want to hold the reins to our future wellness, this is really good news. But it also means a deep commitment to relearning what wellness means, how to do it, and with whom to do it. And so this goes straight to our children, how we raise our children to understand what wellness is and how responsible are they in keeping themselves disease-free for a lifetime. So we have our annual spring cleanse that's in March and April, and that focuses on that first step of Ayurveda, which is clean out the interior of the body, make all of the channels and vessels and organs empty. There is nothing in the human body that was designed to hold on to anything for very long. The mind or the body, the heart, the brain, the bowels, bladder, everything was designed for emptiness or transit toward becoming empty. So if something in the body is not emptying out, whether it's your memories or channels of the heart or channels of the kidneys, that's where we have to figure out why is there a backup, and then we deal with the organ itself to cure that organ so that it can begin to flush out. Modern medicine mostly focuses on the symptoms of the disease, making the symptoms go away so that you don't feel the backup or you don't feel the pain, and thereby kind of masking it, and the problem then becomes much larger the next month. So early on, if you know that there's a problem, by scanning the body and listening and feeling for symptoms of change, even simple things like a sty in the eye or twitching in the muscle or a strange rash on the wrist or a strange numbness in the foot. These are all things that sometimes we just say, oh, it'll go away. But these are all messengers. These are brilliant ways your body has of giving you stage 0 implication. You are responsible for addressing it. Find someone who can read that symptom, trace it back to the organ that is backed up, and empty it out. So that's our spring cleanse. And then, of course, we do the one-on-one health consults and services to help you discover what you need. We have all the supplements and teas and the nutritive substances. And then we have our retreat to India, where you can go and immerse yourself in an ashram wellness center and just do your services every day, go to class, have someone cook your vegetables for you, sleep deeply and come home refreshed. Okay. So primarily, all indigenous healing is trying to explain to you is that you're not a machine, you're a garden. So machines, when they break down because of age, usually, because it's not a living thing, it breaks down because of friction. And that friction is caused by the withdrawal of oil or water. And then the environment helps it to rust. So we have equated the human body to a machine or a computer for many decades now, and it's really kind of trained our mind away from the truth of the original healers, was that your body is a garden and you're the gardener. A garden has all 5 elements in it: soil and the sun and the air and the water and the seeds. And if the gardener walks into a garden and sees a weed, he could very well just sit down and study that weed. But while he's studying that weed, it's reproducing under the ground. So better that he pluck the weed and then fix the soil so that he doesn't invite any more weeds. Make sure that the soil pH is right. Make sure that the plants have enough air, they have enough sun, they have enough water. This is the gardener's job, is to make the environment appropriate. And we say this is also the parent's job. You know, if you focus on just the child and not the garden, then you're missing the point. The child can raise themselves if they have the right environment. They will know what to do. They're smarter than we are in so many ways. Just make the environment right and then turn them loose for many hours a day. So in the garden of your body, you know, there are also the 5 elements of the soil, right? The bones, the flesh, the organs, the tissues. And then you have the fire is there. The sun is there in the form of hydrochloric acid, which is in the gut. But fire is also in your mind, you know, and in the form of ambition or thoughts or, you know, get up and get this done, or even anger when it gets out of control. There is water in the body, just as there is in a river. We have it in our veins. We have it in the womb. We have it. It's everywhere. We're mostly water. One of the reasons we're mostly water is because we're host to millions of different microbes that make digestion possible. Our body doesn't actually digest food, but the microbes in the body digest food. So our garden has to include the right fruits and flora for those microbes to be strong enough to digest what we're eating. So we have a big job. We have a huge responsibility of managing a garden that we should learn to understand how it works and what it needs to be the best garden ever. And once you get that right, once you get that formula right for your unique constitution, then you can stand back and let it do what it does, which is makes T cells for your immune system that run around and make sure that there's no weeds popping up. And if they do, the immune system can eliminate them for you. You don't have to have biopsies and radiation and all these things if you catch it in the early stages and make sure that your immune system is as strong as it should be. And to do that, we have lifestyle. So how does the gardener work? The gardener works like this. He understands, or she understands, that we have these 5 elements only. We have fire, air, ether, earth, and water. Those are the only 5 elements on the planet. No matter how big our ego gets, no matter how big our intellect gets, we cannot invent in this planet, in this plane of existence, inside this atmosphere, we cannot invent anything more than what we see in this wheel. Everything that you see in your elemental table, you know, that says we have 108 elements. Actually, there's only one element, and it's hydrogen. All other elements come from hydrogen. They are all iterations of one element, hydrogen. Everything on Earth comes from and reduces to hydrogen. And hydrogen is part of what component on this wheel besides Earth? Water. So material, hydrogen and all its derivatives, and water, hydrogen and oxygen and all of its derivatives makes everything on the planet go. Fire on the planet is everything comes from the sun. All energy comes from the sun. We are trying to make, you know, fabricated energy just the same way as we're trying to make fabricated medicine. So we have nuclear power. We have other forms of combustible powers, but everything that is natural fire comes from the sun. Earth constitutes anything that is solid, moving very slowly so that you can see it, touch it, feel it, swallow it. And so most modern practices, wellness practices, are based there. It's 20% of your existence is material. Water and earth is 20% of who you are, consciousness. 80% you can't see, fire, air, and ether. Quantum field, or you can call, if you're a Christian, you can call it Christ mind. And then we have the 3 energies we mentioned in the first slide, 5 elements and 3 energies. 5 plus 3 equals all of life. So we have 3 energies there in the center, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Physicists will also tell you there are 3 energies. They just don't call them this. Physics comes out of the original Vedic texts. All physicists are taught with original physics from the Vedas. And it's just called something else, 3 different names. But Vata, let's start with Vata, that green one in the center. So Vata means movement. It's the energy that's responsible for moving something from one place to the next. And we'll talk about where that happens in the body in the next slide. So if you look at the elements that compose Vata, it's air and ether. So pretty much it's invisible, right? Air and ether, you can't see either of them, but you can see the results of what they do in the world. A tornado is an example, is a very strong, Vata is very strong wind, moves something really big from one town to the next, right? But Vata is also a very calm breeze. You can still feel it on your face. It might move a leaf, but it's the same energy, just in a different quantity. And this exists inside the body too, and I'll show you next where that is. Then you have the fire energy. This is Pitta, and the fire energy is responsible for fracturing or breaking things from one component into 2, and 2 into 4, and 4 into 8, such as found in our digestive tract. Hydrochloric acid breaks food into smallest components so that it can be taken up as nutrients. And the third energy is Kapha, and that we call adhesion, the energy that holds things together. So magnetic strength or sticky strength. You know, water happens to be very sticky. So when it touches another substance, they tend to stick together. So this Kapha energy is made from earth and water and focuses on cohesion. Pitta is made of fire, and water is based in fracturing. Water can also fracture something. If you hit a stone with water for long enough, it's going to be 2 stones in about 10,000 years. Fire just works faster. Was there any questions about this medicine wheel? I know it's a lot. There's a lot of learning in this wheel. I could teach a whole 6-hour class just on this wheel. So I'm just trying to give you a brief introduction to it. So I wanted to show you, before we look at where these energies are in the body, I wanted to show you the definitions, sort of the characteristics of each of these energies. Because if you can't see, touch, feel or hold wind, then how do you know what it is? What are the characteristics? Again, we know because of what it does in the world. It's very dry, because when there's a lot of wind, the dry environment. We know that it's very light because it's not heavy. We know that it's very cold because there's no heat there. It's made of air and ether, both being very cold. We know it's rough because that's what it does to a surface. Think of the sand dunes, the wind goes over it long enough and it becomes rippled. It's very subtle. It's not gross, but it's very small. So we do a lot of guessing. It's very mobile. It moves things, and it's clear. You can't see it with the human eye. It does exist, and they are particles. Air is a particle. Ether is a particle. So when science say there's nothing there like dark matter in ether, it's not true. There is something there. We just don't have any tools subtle enough to see what the particles of ether are. Ether meaning outer space or empty dark matter. Or the human cell has 3% matter in it. It's 97% empty, or Vata. So there is something there. We just can't put our fingers on it. We can't measure it or hold it. Not yet. We shouldn't never try. It's probably dangerous. So then the Pitta, this fire energy responsible for fracturing, breaking things apart, is hot. Hot breaks things apart, right? It's sharp. It's also very light. It's liquid like lava. It's mobile like air. Fire travels. We've seen that in California. It travels real fast. And it's oily. Because it has a component in there that is water. So it together, fire and water creates this oily substance. And then we have Kapha is heavier, it's slower, it's colder, it also is oily, liquid, smooth surface, very dense, very soft, static meaning not moving. It's sticky because that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to hold things together. It's hard, and gross meaning large, usually large, because it collects things as it goes. It starts to, because it's sticky, it'll start to collect things as it moves. So everything that we see in our environment can be defined by these three categories. And by everything, I mean everything. Every tree, every animal, every human, every school, every country, every book, every idea, everything that happens on the planet can be defined by this three category definition of constitution or characteristic. We're going to talk about why would we want to do that? Why do we want to categorize everything? Why aren't we supposed to be saying, the world is flat and it doesn't matter? Well, yes, but if we want to be successful in partnering with people or healing ourselves or developing our mind, we do need to understand how the world works from a physics level so that we can maneuver in it and come out on the other side successful. So if that's the three energies, we also have the 5 elements in the human body, and they course through the body, and in different ways, in different compositions, they organize themselves, coming together in a very unique way for each individual, defined at conception. The moment you're conceived, your mix of the 3 energies and the 5 elements are done. You cannot change it. Not ever, ever, ever. No matter how hard you try, it's only going to make you miserable. So the goal of Ayurveda is to help the client understand what their mix is, and then help them understand what are the benefits of your unique constitution and what are the things you need to watch out for so they don't become imbalanced. We'll talk a little bit about that next. So in the human hand, we have 5 fingers. All the nerves of the body terminate in the feet and in the hands. And when they figured that out, it was actually Gorakhnath who figured this out, meditating in caves. Never did an autopsy, but he discovered that through meditation on the belly button, that the dashboard of the belly button was this intersection of all the nerves coming together and sending them through from the upper torso, through the lower body, into the toes, and out into the hands. And then they would terminate, and each finger was responsible for nerves that connected to different parts of the body. For instance, the pinky for women is connected to the uterus because water is at home in the middle body. It's in the womb, where the baby sits is where water goes for the female. So keeping our water balanced is for a different purpose than we would say water is for a man balanced for a different reason. So all of these fingers, each of these fingers is attached to its corresponding region and organ. And so we can use the fingers and the toes through reflexology, palpitations through reflexology to stimulate organs that are out of balance or sad or seasonally depressed or, having a hard time recovering from trauma or surgery. We can access them through the feet and the hands in unique ways. That's just one application. Okay. So there's 3 types of constitution. And I think the artist who drew this did a really poor job because they kind of don't make these men look very happy, except Pitta in the center looks like he's on top of the world. But that's why I like this picture, is because Pitta people do feel like they're on top of the world. And they feel large and in charge, and that's their goal. They have more of a sporty body. They have shorter muscle bodies that we call them brown muscles. They're runners, they're bodybuilders. They love that treadmill where you get on it and you turn the numbers on and they see those numbers going up and makes them really happy. And their career choices happen to be the same. They love spreadsheets. They are CFOs. They are get it done yesterday, my way or the highway kind of folks. They can be very demanding. They make terrific managers for companies, very successful. The United States happens to be a very Pitta-based country. We are focused on profit and productivity. And that's the word of the day for the Pitta is productivity. That is their mantra every day. They have a couch in their house that they've never sat on because that would just be wrong. They get up, they go to work. That's their gig and it makes them happy. Right? When they're out of balance, that Pitta person can be a little bit of a hothead, easy to get angry, a little bit overindulgent with things that stimulate the gut, where the Pitta region is. We'll see that in the next slide. So of the three, this is the one that's most inclined to become an addict, or alcoholic, or dependent on a substance. So those are things that when people come in, we have to talk about those things, not as a judgment, but as a cautionary thing that, a drink a week is, usually not a problem, but let's be careful, you are Pitta, and it is a problem for many Pitta people. So that's one way of understanding how to counsel people past the sort of the dark side of their constitution. The Vata person is by nature a mover. They are a networker. They pick up the phone, they meet people, they connect with people, they bring people together usually. They get people what they need. They're great at supporting people and making people feel good. They're generally going to be the cops and the monks and the teachers and the therapists and the nurses and the spiritual people, the helpers, the care providers. It just comes to them naturally, if those are some kind of career options. But they're also very arts-based, dancers, poets, people who are not as motivated by money so much like the Pitta person is. They're mostly motivated by one thing, and that is freedom. Freedom from oppression, freedom from the demands of a 9-to-5 job, freedom to make their own decisions. So they're not going to want to be found in a relationship where the husband is making all of the decisions, or if it's the man who's the Vata, he's going to be very uncomfortable if his Pitta wife is making all the financial decisions. So freedom, right? Pitta is productivity, Vata, freedom. On the darker side of being a Vata person, if they get too far out of control, too nonconformist, too much not wanting to sit down and do the 9-to-5, too much not wanting to do the adulting part of, I don't really care about this part of my job, but I have to do it. They can be a runaway train running around the world looking for things like being a seeker, or, joining one club and then another club, or one guru and then another teacher. They can be sort of indecisive, have trouble making a commitment. So those are, and then mental illness is also one of the dark side of being a fully Vata person, predominantly Vata person, is they can get too much of it in their head and then lose sight of the ground. I like to describe these three people as like a hot air balloon. If the Vata person is the balloon itself, Pitta is that fire that they have to light to make the balloon go up. And the Kapha person is the basket. So the Kapha person is the person that's holding this whole thing together. In the balloon, she's not on the basket, it's also got the straps holding the balloon to the basket, and it's the rope holding it to the ground. And the basket's telling the balloon, no, we're not going that high. It's too high in the atmosphere. We're going to stay closer to the ground where the humans live and the trees live, They're the realistic person in the room. They're the lady in the family who has seating for 8, but she invites 32 to Thanksgiving because, more the merrier kind of folks. In a company, she's the front office manager. She knows where all the skeletons are hidden. She can tell everybody the company story. She'll organize the company picnic and tell everyone what to bring. She's just the lady that holds everybody together, and a lot of people depend on her for nurturing and loving and advice. And that's the good part of being Kapha. Very sweet, smiling all the time. The dark side of being Kapha is oftentimes she stays too long in places where she's not welcome. So relationships can go on and on, even though it's not serving either one of them, because of her lacking the ability to make change. Change is not really her strong for, her forte. She does need to make change, but she's not willing to do it. And so sometimes that Kapha person, if she's a woman, can become sort of a doormat. And if it's a man, a Kapha man who's become a doormat, then he can become very heavy with depression and obesity and feelings of being trapped. So those are personality parts of these three constitutions, but you can also see it in the shape of their body. That Vata person being a movement based. He's taller, he's floating away, he's got really long legs so he can run at the top of a hat, has no problem, like myself, moving to the other side of the planet and joining an ashram, no problem. But Kapha, you can see they have thicker thighs, they're more grounded, they're more earth-based, they're stockier, they have big eyes, big hair, big eyebrows. And then that Pitta person, kind of in the middle, but because he's hotter, he has thinner hair than the other two. Any questions about those three constitutions and their personality type, happy side, dark side, career side? Let's look at where it exists in the body now. We've been talking a little bit about that. Let's talk about Vata first. So I talked about, too much air in the head. So first question is usually if air is in the head, why is it all the way down in the colon? So the home of Vata is in the lowest part of the body, with its comfy place being the colon. So one thing that I think a lot of general physicians lack is an understanding of the GI tract in general. But one fascinating thing that I like to explain to people is that the colon is responsible for the movement of the entire GI tract. When your body signals digestion, peristalsis, the intestines move and move food down the tract, those instructions come from the colon. And that's what Vata does. It says to the GI tract, 3 miles north, way up at the mouth, it says, eat and move the food and move it down here. And all those instructions come from that, just like you would see in a corporate environment. The visionary, the leader, think Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs never built a phone. He just had the idea of the phone and he gave instructions on how to design and build this phone. And then he would, send everybody out to do their thing, to move things along and get things turning. And that's exactly, I'm sorry to equate, Steve Jobs to a colon, but essentially the work is the same. It's leadership. It's telling what is next, how do you move it along, and let's get started. So that's why Vata is sitting in the lowest part of the body, because the legs are there. The colon is there. Movement, move the body, move the GI tract. So that's where Vata lives, in the lowest part. When the colon is not functioning, because of whatever reason, lifestyle choices most generally, and it stops moving, then that is no longer Vata's happy place. It starts to move north. And over many years of dysfunction in the GI, the Vata energy can actually end up being all the way north, even north of the heart, and end up messing up the head. And the way you can understand this is, how do you feel when you're constipated? Are you all there up here? Are you all, thinking, and you can work and you can invent things and you can do your job if you haven't, gone to the toilet in 3 days? No. I mean, think about international travel. If you've gone overseas, it's a full 3 days before the colon is functioning because you have changed time zones. It's very fickle. And when that happens, our thinking changes. And that's how we know that the colon is in charge. So we have to keep the colon right. I remember that when I first started working with physicians in the wellness center, everybody that came into the wellness center, the physician would work up their protocol, and then he'd say, this one starts with an enema. And I was in charge of enemas because I was a student. So, yay, low person on the totem pole. I get to do those. But after like the 13th intake, one's got a cold, one's got a rash, one has a sty in his eye. They're all getting enemas. And I started to think that my teacher was a total quack. But then he sat down and he said, you have to empty the runway before anything is going to work. We're going to detox the body. If the colon's not empty, there is no place for the toxins to go. So everybody gets an enema, everybody. And so that becomes a huge part of your annual detox, is clearing out the colon to make room for the toxins you're about to spill from a cellular basis from all over the body. So that's where Vata lives. Pitta, you can see the red part is in the middle area, in the abdomen. All the organs responsible for digestion is the home of Pitta, hydrochloric acid being its fuel. So liver, spleen, gall, stomach, duodenum, pancreas, all of them are dependent on an accurate metabolism. And your metabolism is accurate or not, depending on how much Agni you have, how much fuel you have in the body. So right now in Michigan, it's in the middle of winter, right? 21 below zero. And when that happens, when you think about a house with a furnace in it, if it gets really, really cold in the house, what happens to the furnace, right? It blazes up, the heat goes up, up, up. And so that's what happens in the winter. The temperatures drop outside and your body cranks up the fire and says, I'm hungry, hungry, hungry. And so we go to the kitchen and we eat comfort food to calm down that hunger, and we end up coming out of winter with 10 more pounds. It is totally normal. The body works that way to protect us because we weren't always comfort creatures inside with a blankie. We used to live in yurts or in huts or in trees or wherever we lived, and the body had to respond to protect the human from dying. So if it got cold outside, metabolism went up, the human would eat, put on fat, and protect itself from the weather. Now that we know that, and we are comfort creatures living inside, and it gets cold outside, we know that the fire's going to go up, and we're going to be tempted to go in the kitchen and eat everything. And so we have to be aware of what to do instead. How do we keep the fire normal and not too high or too low so that our appetite remains normal? And there's things we can do to make that happen, not only in lifestyle choices, including when do we eat and what do we eat, but also there are things that we can use called deepana, which are just simple things that we can eat or chew on, at the time of the day when we're supposed to be eating, but we're not hungry. So there's things we can do to inspire our appetite, or when we're done eating and the sun is going down and we're still hungry, then there's nutritive powders that we can take to satisfy our body's need for food without putting on a lot of calories in it. So there's many things that you can learn about how to manage that metabolism and make it more accurate. And then thirdly, kapha. Again, the question I get from students is, if kapha is heavy and dense, why isn't it in the bottom of the body closer to the earth? So kapha, if kapha's, oh, I forgot to tell you the magic word for kapha. If vata's word of the day is freedom and pitta's word of the day is productivity, then kapha's word of the day is together. And so it is in the upper part of the body because that's where your brain and your spinal column are. And it is your spinal column, all the intelligence that travels north and south through the vagus nerve and through your spinal column, that holds your body together. It holds your five senses connected to your flesh and your lungs. And it makes sure that all of the signals that come north and south and north are all managed and held together so that you're a complete human being, distinguished from other human beings. Without kapha, we would just be puddles, a bunch of puddles sitting around unconnected. So, but with kapha in the spinal column, and so in the brain and heart, the whole body is knit together and held together for the duration of its life. So nostrils, sinuses, the throat, the bronchi, all of the lungs from the aorta all the way to the tip of the brain is all kapha central. So all of our memories, all of our intelligence, also all of our regret and anger and resentment, those are also held if you decide to hold on to poison things. Those are all things that affect and are actuated in the upper part of the body. Sweetness, is also there, the heart, the home of love and the home of the circulation, and the kapha heart sends blood around the body, but then she brings it all back, right? So nothing leaves. Any questions about where it is in the body? The doshas? Doshas really just means your constitution or the characteristics. And then we also have the doshas in the day. Like I said in the beginning, everything in your environment can be looked at and divided into 3 categories, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. And so we divide the day this way too. In the earliest part of the morning at 6 a.m. when we're all waking up, those are your Kapha hours. Kapha activities would be studying, it would be your yoga, your weight training, your anything having to do with the upper part of the body, with the memory, the brain. We have from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock is when your hydrochloric acid is turning on. So that's when the sun is up, noontime. So that's when you're doing your eating. And also any Pitta activities having to do with money, balance sheets, management, everything productivity. 2 to 6 would be your movement hours. So if you're having to make phone calls or network or moved from one place to the other or work on your distribution plan, that would be the time. 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Again, Kapha repeats. That's your family time. That's when you're doing your chores around the house, keeping people happy, playing board games, family time, friends time. Sleeping by 10 so that between 10 and 2, again, hydrochloric acid. If your hydrochloric acid during the day is being built and produced to digest from 10 to 2, when you're asleep, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., again, the digestive organs, that's their time to dump all the detritus of what the hydrochloric acid digested. So kidney, liver, gall, everything's going to dump the detritus of the day into the lymph glands and into the blood and into the urine, into the colon, large intestine, and so that 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. you have deep REM sleep. So usually when people come in and they say they have insomnia and they're under a lot of stress, I can pretty much nail it that they're waking up somewhere between 3:45 and 4:30, and that's the magic hour for Vata. If you have too much stress going on in your life, that air is going to move up into your head and wake you up in the middle of the night worrying about something that you can't change at 4:30 in the morning. So when you're feeling imbalance or when you're feeling symptoms, what time of day it is and what your primary constitution is gives the practitioner a really good idea of where the imbalance is coming from. We also have the doshic divisions and the seasons, right? We have spring here in Michigan. We have spring, summer, fall, and winter. Not all countries have that. So in the Vedas, there's actually only 3 seasons written because it's a desert environment. We have in the Thar Desert, we have 3 seasons: hot, hotter, and hottest. Oh my God, we're dying, kind of hot. So, but here, so we have spring, which is known for lots and lots of rain here. So that's going to be your Kapha season. And then summer is hot. That's your Pitta season. Fall, again, is going to be rain and cold is another Kapha season. And then winter comes here in Michigan, and that's our Vata season with cold and wind. Again, once we know the seasons, a Vata person like myself, in the winter is problematic. I get dry skin because I'm normally dry. My constitution is dry, and then in a dry environment like winter, I'm going to have some problems keeping my skin moist. But a Pitta person in the summer is going to have a hard time not having acid reflux because they're hot and they're living in a hot time of year. So knowing what season it is and knowing what your constitution is will allow you to eat and behave in a way that allow your body to remain balanced. Okay, so here's where we have a nice discussion. So applications for once you understand that who you are, and then you can find out who your kids are, what their constitutions are. What we've discovered is that families are evenly balanced with somebody in the family is Vata, somebody is Pitta, and somebody is Kapha. Usually the universe is quite kind like that. I have a client, a woman who had triplet girls, identical triplets, and I treat all 3 of the girls and the mother, and each of the triplets is one of each. One is Vata, one is Pitta, and one is Kapha. and they're identical just looking at them. But when you examine and you start to ask questions and you hear their personalities, it is so obvious. The universe is kind like this. As long as there's no infanticide going on, whole countries have equal measure Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And that's because all three are needed. Think about building a team in any company to come up with solutions. If you have all Vata on the team, right? You have 7 Vatas coming up with a solution. We're going to be talking about dance and travel. So you need all three to come up with solutions that are applicable to all people. So, and that's why families are evenly balanced, so that they can all learn from each other, learn tolerance, first of all, and then learn the benefits and the dark sides of each of those constitutions so that they can balance each other out. In relationships, there is nothing more that balances people out more than communication. So a Vata person like myself, we use a lot of words, we use a lot of stories and descriptors. We use our hands a lot. And talking to Pitta people, I've learned that I have to tone that down a little bit and speak more directly, shorter sentences with a closed-ended question so that they can answer me with a yes or a no, right? But when I train Pitta people to speak to their Vata spouses, I have to teach them the opposite. Speak to the Vata person, not with closed-ended questions, but with open-ended questions. Invite them to explain to you their answer in the form of a story or interpretive dance, and your relationship will last forever. So learning who is in the room and how to speak to each other so that the constitutions balance each other out, because you need each other. We cannot survive without diversity. It's not possible. Think about trees, right? What if we have only one kind of tree on the planet? The soil would be ruined. The air would be ruined. We need all of them to work together and to make the proper ecosystem. Second way, career finding and career development. I've worked with a lot of teenagers coming out of Western University here who are struggling because their parents want them to go into the STEM sciences or into finance. And the problem with that is that if it's not matching your constitution, a student who trains for a career that they're not built for will eventually fail. But on the way to failure, long-term failure will come usually depression and addiction, because they're masking what their true personality wants them to do, right? If a Vata student wants freedom, but they're training for a Pitta career like CPA, they're going to be terrible at being an accountant, because that's just not how their brain sees the world. We're not empty chalices at birth, the way that some of the psychologists in the 40s thought that we were just slates waiting to be written on by adults, right? We've discovered it's the other way around, that children are born with the intelligence of who they are and what they're meant to be, and then it's beaten out of them in school or in their community, who says, yeah, I know what you want to be, but that doesn't fit with what we need you to be. And so we have this whole industrial complex of academia created to generate cookie cutter people to fit into careers that have always existed. But what we're looking at now, certainly since the last election, and now we have, the new world coming along, is that we don't know what the new world is going to need, but we suspect it's not what the old world was training us for. We have no idea. I had no idea going through college what I was going to do, for my career. I just knew what I liked, and I liked to study those things. And because I was a girl, all the teachers said, yeah, go ahead, doesn't matter anyway. So I did exactly what I wanted to do and ended up here. So career finding and career development is really important when it comes to students, to find out at conception they were already designed and done. You just need to find out by listening and talking to them and understanding what their constitution is, what their predilections are, what their inferences are, how they see the world, and what they feel is important to them, and then take it from there and just support them. Friends, Choosing your friends, again, super important. If you're kapha, don't hang out with a bunch of kapha people, because what ends up happening is you sit a lot or you go to restaurants a lot, but there's not a lot of diversity, like doing things like hiking and or traveling or competitive sports is not something that kapha people are into, but it's really good for them to practice for a marathon once a year with their pitta friends, because it's a good balance, and their pitta friends do need to go to the movies once in a while, or play games once in a while. So to hang out with people who are not like you, go to a party and look for people who are not just like you. It's better for you, it's better for your own development if you don't hang out with people and personalities that are exactly like your own. Movement and sports. The applications here are so important for you to choose the type of movement that's appropriate for your constitution. For instance, Vata people and Kapha people should not be running a whole lot. It's not good for our joints. We don't have the type of ligaments that can support that kind of behavior long term and get away with it, meaning no injuries later. Pitta folks have the right joints, they have the right muscles, they have the right height, and they have the right endurance. So if they want to do long marathons or things that impact their spinal their spine and knees, they could survive it, but the Kapha and the Vata won't. Again, Vata people, if we're focused on freedom, we need to be doing things that make us feel free, like dance, swim, free hikes, off-road hiking, things that it's not repetitive movements. And then Kapha people need vigor. They need sweaty stuff, like vigorous Ashtanga yoga, things that make them sweat. And this is not their inclination. They don't like to sweat and do things that are vigorous, but if they don't, they can get overweight very quickly. Raising children, we talked about politics. We're seeing this happen in politics and big business in the United States, where everybody wants that alpha male, that pitta person to be, the entire workforce to all be pitta people. They call the alpha male or alpha female, and it's such a disaster. For instance, I met with a group of men that wanted to have promotions in their companies, but they were not having any success, and they were salespeople. So what I discovered was that the ones that felt they were failing were all Vata men, and the men that they felt were succeeding were all Pitta men. They were really aggressive, really out there, like massive email campaigns and just this really aggressive stuff. So when I counseled the Vata men, what I discovered was that they were all really good at talking and really good at listening and really good at relationship building. So I shifted them to relationship selling and content selling and nurturing selling. So when they picked up the phone and they had some hint about what was happening in the industry in the next 3 months, and they shared it with a select few people, guess who became their clients immediately? Just from phone calls and relationship versus aggression and mass emails. So not that I would never, explain this to the Pitta folks, because that was working, their method was working for them. But the Vata males needed to own their Vata-ness and use their superpowers for networking in order to succeed. And they are all very successful in all of them have promotions. Same in politics. We need a variety of politicians working for us. Community development is a Vata person, but then you have the researchers and the zoning folks, and those are Kapha jobs. So we need a nice mix and not the same politician over and over again. Personal health we've discussed, and personal development. Personal development, or in India it's called personality development, simply means that once you discover what your personality is, then we can design a protocol that helps you to stay personally healthy and personality developing in ways that uses meditation, your particular style of meditation, your particular style of study, or movement in a way that keeps you developing and expanding in a positive sense and not always in comparison with someone else. Does anybody else have any other questions about applications of Ayurveda doshas on a daily basis or how they've used it? So digestive process. I love this drawing. It came from my from a student in my postdoctoral program in India when I was studying yoga therapy. But it basically explains that contrary to Western understanding, your GI tract is in charge of all of your decisions because that's the home of all of the microbes that digest food and into nutrient bite-sized pieces that become your flesh from the very beginning when you're in utero. They're the microbes that are passed along to you through the umbilical cord and start your life are those microbes. So what we understood about that is that in Western nutrition, they don't necessarily talk about where the food is going. They talk mostly about food. But if you don't understand the pot that you're cooking in or the vessels that it's moving through, you don't really understand how it's going to be processed, then you can't understand how food becomes you. And so this digestive process includes the stove, which is your hydrochloric acid inside your stomach and gut, and then the vessel, the lining of the digestive tract, the rice, which is the food product you're putting in there, and the air blower. So without air in the digestive tract, you can't have peristalsis. So in Ayurveda, we recommend 1/3 of the gut has the meal, 1/3 of the gut is the liquid from the meal or water that you take, and 1/3 of the gut is left empty so that air and that emptiness, peristalsis, can begin the digestive process. Okay, so here we have Gorakhnath. So what I want you to take away from this is Gorakhnath's first words. So I told you he meditated for 14 years. He started when he was 14. And he had 10 caves all over India where, he would spend a couple years in each and move on to the next, probably depending on the weather. And after 14 years, he came out of the cave, and all of his disciples at that point, had heard about Gorakhnath, the amazing meditator, and they had followed. He had probably had his groupies following him around, waiting to hear what he was going to say. So when he came out of the cave, he said in his language, he said, laugh, play, meditate, and hang out with people that laugh, play, and meditate. Because if you do this, if you laugh and if you play and you meditate and you hang out with people that do the same, you'll never get sick. You'll never need yoga. You'll never need anything. If you can laugh, play, and meditate, that's the science. Think about how laughing empties the heart and calms down the nervous system. Play, exercise, and meditate. Sit down and let all the energy go home. Those are the 3 components of perfect health. But then he told his people, he said, but if you forget to laugh, play, and meditate, well, then you're going to need yoga as a therapy. And if you don't do your yoga, if you forget, or if you just choose not to, well, then you're going to need Ayurveda. And there weren't that many Ayurveda physicians in India, so this is a problem. And if you still choose not to do the Ayurveda, well, then you can go to the city and find a modern doctor and he'll cut it out of you. So when I learned the story, I was actually in one of Gorakhnath's caves. When I heard this story, I just thought, all this studying that we're doing with modern medicine, if we trace it back to the very beginning when they understood how to keep humans healthy, we don't need modern medicine. We don't need Ayurveda, and we don't need yoga. If we remember to do the first thing, and guess who laughs and plays the most in our society? Not really America, but most of the world, children are still laughing and playing a lot every day, all day. Children laugh on average 500 times in one day about nothing. They just laugh, and it's because it's their body's response to anything is to laugh, because it empties channels and it calms down the autonomic nervous system. They're born laughing. They are our best teachers for wellness. And then they grow up and they can move around, and the first thing they do is play. And then they lie down and they sleep. And that's it. And that's all they need to do to remain absolutely healthy. It's only as we grew up in society that those things were taken away from us, and we needed to have a pace of economy so that we could produce. And that's when it all went awry. And so if you understand this, and you know you have to go to work every day, then do that. But on balance, right? On balance, if you're going to work 8 hours, how many hours are you going to have to laugh, play, and meditate to reduce the damage that the job is doing to you? Is the first question. Maybe the second question is, do we need a different job that isn't causing so much damage to the body? Or can we raise our children differently so that one day they don't have to listen to Shreejan say, you need a different job, right? Raise them in a way that they can have the right job for the right reason, in the right place, and in the right way, with the right people and the right lifestyle. We have a class for kids and we have a class for adults in our IU 120 program called the 5 Pillars of Health. And when children see this, the youngest children, they're like, yeah, duh. I mean, of course. So the 5 Pillars of Health is actually not for the children, it's for the parents who are in the room with the children. So that once you understand what the 5 Pillars of Health are, going all the way back to Gorakhnath, once you can accommodate the 5 Pillars of Health in your everyday with all of your children and stick to it religiously because it's a matter of life and death, then those children will feel committed to keeping themselves healthy their whole lives and not have to take pills for symptoms to get rid of symptoms because they don't know what the root cause of the disease actually was. So that's my Gorakhnath. So here's our Q&A time. We get to ask questions. And I talked a lot. And why don't we sign off at this point? Caitlin, I'll say namaste to everybody on the call, and then send your needfuls and anything you want to communicate to me, and we'll talk and set up your free call, and we'll get you into the clinic or on Zoom and have your intake and see what we can do for all of you on the call. Namaste. Have a good evening.